That was quick. Robert Saleh, 2 days after the 49ers season ends, is on his way to Tennessee. He has been hired as the Titans' new head coach. Good move for Robert Saleh. And how do the 49ers replace him at defensive coordinator? All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock, at Coach Crocky. Thanks everybody for making this your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And the 49ers get poached again. Feels like yesterday that Robert Saleh got hired away the first time. He was a one-and-done defensive coordinator. That's 3 in a row for the 49ers if you are keeping count since DeMeco Ryans left a few years ago. And Robert Saleh now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. And with us today, our first off-season Winky Wednesday. Let's bring on today's guest.
Nicholas Winkler, come on down.
Action News 8 Sports with Nick Winkler.
Wow.
Wink, that was quick. Robert Saleh is gone. He is now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. He went and had his second interview the day after the 49ers season ended. He was having multiple interviews during the week. I want to get your guys' thoughts on coaches taking interviews instead of preparing for their playoff opponent. But now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, and reports were that it was Robert Saleh's #1 job. And I think you hear a lot of that type of stuff. I don't know how true it was. Wink, what are your thoughts on the 49ers losing defensive coordinator Robert Saleh to Tennessee?
I mean, if you're a defensive coordinator out there right now, even if you have a job, you might want to ask if you can do one of those lateral moves. Because if you're the 49ers defensive coordinator, you're going to be a head coach after next season. So it's a bummer. I mean, what Robert Saleh brought to this team, what brought to this sideline, brought to this fan base. I mean, he's just fun to watch out there. It's immeasurable. This guy's a stud. I wish him all the best in Tennessee. To say that it's his #1 with places like Baltimore out there, like, really? You'd rather go to Tennessee than Baltimore? Really?
Yeah. We're like, hey, Robert, did you hear that the Buffalo Bills fired Sean McDermott?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, crap. Did they? Man, I already signed this contract with the Titans. Man, I could have coached Josh Allen. Croc, what do you think? Good move for Robert Saleh going from, I mean, there's not that many head coaching jobs out there. Even though this was one of the worst teams in the NFL last year.
Yeah, I want the best for Robert Saleh, and anybody that's a part of the 49ers organization, you want to see them do well. Hell, I'm supposed to hate Seattle, and I do hate Seattle, but I am rooting for Sam Darnold because USC was a 49er. Like, I want to see Sam do good, right? I want to see Bob do well. And my initial reaction to seeing Bob Saleh signing a deal with Tennessee was, damn, he really wants to be a head football coach because I think that's when I kind of set out of that, right? I think young quarterbacks, and this is not to say that it never works out, but you just were in a similar situation where you went to a team, they wanted a young, unproven quarterback, and it blew up. Find a way to resolve the issue. Right, even going to get old man Rodgers, and obviously he ruptured his Achilles when he first got out there, so a little unfair. But the defense was good. Bob Saleh is not an offensive coach, so if you have him in charge of having to potentially make a young quarterback look good or develop him, like that's not what he does. Somebody else has to do that. So I think some people will look at the situation with Chicago, where Ben Johnson came in and just really flipped it, right, and even through the ups and downs that Caleb Williams had this season, it was a terrific year. And I believe that Williams will likely get better. But at least Johnson was in charge of that. When you have no say-so over the development of this player, it's tough. And I like Cam Ward probably as much as anyone. I think he played well against the 49ers. Maybe that got Bob Saleh excited. But he was very erratic throughout the season, and it's not to say that he can't be good, but that's not something that I would be willing to hitch my wagon to. I would try to wait for a better opportunity, and I use myself as an example where when I was just an assistant, right? I was a defensive back coach, high school football, not NFL. You're talking about millions of dollars there, but somebody approached me about being a head coach of this high school. And I said, no, I'm cool. Like, that's not going to work for me. I'd rather be an assistant coach for another year. And I was, until a better opportunity opened up. And I said, okay, I like this situation. I like where it's at. I like, I feel like I can do something there. And I took that job. I don't want to see Bob Saleh fail.
Mm-hmm.
And there may be some pieces I heard people, got a lot of money. Man, building through the free agency a lot of times doesn't quite work out, and overpaying guys. So just not a situation I would have liked to see him go to. The Steelers, Baltimore, maybe they just weren't willing to interview him. Buffalo, I think those spots would have been like, okay, let's go, Saleh, you got something there. But man, I think it's gonna be a little tough in Tennessee. But we'll see. I'm rooting for him still.
I think he had first interviews with every single opening, maybe not Buffalo because it happened so late in the process and he was already having his second interview with the Tennessee Titans. I think Robert Saleh interviewed everywhere, and maybe minus one team because he was on everybody's list. I think he probably had a feel. I find it hard to believe that he wouldn't have rather had the Bills job or maybe the Baltimore Ravens job, but maybe he had a feel that he wasn't going to be the candidate for those jobs. Croc, I do think you're underrating the young quarterback aspect of this. And I'll say it because in New York, he had a rookie that he knew nothing about. He had a full season and game planned against this quarterback and gets to see what he looks like as an NFL player versus his quarterback in New York with the Jets was just a draft pick. And it was like, let's hope and let's see if we get a guy. And if you watched that team for a year, maybe you wouldn't want to take that job because he didn't look good. But apparently, and Robert Saleh had a lot of nice things to say about Cam Ward before the 49ers played him. But usually you don't badmouth the team's quarterback before you play him, even if you don't like him. But clearly you liked Cam Ward, and I believe those things now that he took that job. Wink, what do you think? Do you think Cam Ward's too much of a risk and still too young and undeveloped for a defensive-minded head coach to go in and think he's got quarterback figured out when that was what did him in a previous job?
I mean, there's a reason he was the number one overall pick, right? I mean, this kid's got worlds of talent. And like you said, Croc, we saw flashes of it where you're like, oh, okay.
Definitely.
All right, if he can keep that up, this kid's going to be a star in this league. And I think what Saleh really needs to do is get himself a great offensive coordinator, get him a quarterback whisperer, get him somebody who can get in there. Saleh can focus on the defense. He can focus on leading everyone and just get some get someone like that. Get somebody who knows offense, knows how to put points on the board. Saleh will handle everything else. Just go get a guy, and I think he'll do just fine.
Real quick, receivers, and we'll just talk about their weapons in general. And maybe this is why Cam Ward wasn't what you would ideally want to see. Alec Ayomanor?
Yeah, Alec Ayomanor. Yeah.
Shamiri DK?
Yeah, DK turned on at the end of the season. He actually had a great 7 games.
James Prochet. They got
that one. I don't know.
James Prochet. He was a late round pick, kind of.
And I remember him coming out.
They're Juwan Jennings, basically. DK, I think, spent some time on Nick Winkler's fantasy football roster this year.
He sure did, and he is a good young player, and I think they've got themselves a stud there. And Ayomanor too. I think he played well early in the season. So a couple of young guys also. You got young wide receivers. You got a young quarterback, you bring in a nice young offensive coordinator who gets the game. I think they could get it clicking.
I think you look to the roster as in the young offensive line and defensive line. Well, at least you got Jeffrey Simmons. You got a game-wrecking defensive tackle. He is the franchise. But you're right, Croc. Teams with a lot of cap space, that's a double-edged sword because that means you don't have a lot of good players to pay. And if you just go throwing money around, you're going to be in bad cap space because you're going to pay bad players because not that many guys even hit free agency anymore. This isn't like remember the old Washington football team that would win free agency every single year and they still stunk, but there was like big time names hardly ever hit free agency these days, it feels like. But I think it's all about Cam Ward and Robert Saleh has to believe in Cam Ward. It says seen enough of him through his rookie NFL season to believe that he is the guy. Otherwise, he would be insane to take that job. And so that's got to be it. I found it fascinating, guys, that there was a report that Robert Saleh had a very detailed offensive coordinator plan it wasn't like, I'm bringing this guy. The plan at offensive coordinator was different for every team. So the guy he thinks would coach Cam Ward the best might not have been his pick for offensive coordinator if he got the job in another city. I think that's pretty interesting. I think it's a pretty smart way to look at it too. And it shows that it's like, no, I'm just not going to bring over my buddy, right? I'm not going to hire my son to be offensive line coach like Pete Carroll did, right? It's not about that. He's trying to build the best thing. And he's probably learned a lot from that situation. I wonder if he also said he's going to call plays for the Titans. And I wonder if he might take more active role in the offense after maybe kind of realizing that he didn't do enough when he was in New York to take control of the situation that was going bad. So I wonder if that was part of his pitch as well, to be like, look, I was too passive and I allowed another guy to call plays on defense, even though the defense was fine. Jeff Roblick was calling the plays for him there. But maybe he said, look, I saw the problems on offense, but I didn't overstep. Maybe he's like, no, I'll step all over everything if I have to fix this thing. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe he can help fix the quarterback.
Pete Carroll, and there's a plethora of other coaches who did a lot better in their second stint as a head coach, and maybe that's going to be the case for Robert Saleh. So, like you said, there were a couple players too. I was looking at the listed starters at the end of the year. I did see, when I kind of looked down the list of receivers, guys, a couple guys that were on IR, Calvin Ridley, Van Jefferson. So there were some guys that kind of play, but I think the biggest thing here is, man, you got to get them a couple weapons.
Yeah.
Tony Pollard, solid at the running back position. I'm not sure what his contract status is, but there's a little something there. But man, a lot to be desired when you worst team in the NFL, or one of the worst teams, excuse me.
Draft that Ohio State wide receiver.
There you go.
You're right, and you're off and rolling there. You're the Tennessee Titans under Robert Saleh. Well, the 49ers have a gaping hole to fill once again, a defensive coordinator. I think there are some pretty good candidates, maybe better candidates than they've had in past years when they were trying to replace defensive coordinator. Let's get into those next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Drip Drop. Kicking off the year, feeling good. That's the goal, right? And honestly, hydration is the easiest win. When I stay on top of it, my energy, focus, and mood all level up. I've been doing some intermittent fasting, and you got to stay hydrated when you're doing that. And Drip Drop has been just the thing for me. Love the flavors. I got the no sugar variety and a variety pack. Big fan of the lemon lime and the peach flavor. I didn't even know I was going to like the peach flavor so much. My wife likes them too. But let's be real. Plain water sometimes doesn't cut it when you're trying to hydrate, you're grinding through long days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your health goals. That's where Drip Drop comes in. Doctor-developed, proven fast hydration that helps your body and mind work better, think clearer, focus, better energy, elevated mood, and even that fresh skin glow. And right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Just go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up now at dripdrop.com and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Guys, what if sports were traded like markets? Well, you can now, and put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I mean, come on, you always knew the game, right? You know the game. You're listening to a football podcast, but maybe you never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now you can take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. So the 49ers need a defensive coordinator, guys. There's one very interesting name that I think should be at the top of the list. We've talked about this before with Andy Reid. Not only do you have a great quarterback, Andy Reid gets to chill out and have one of the top defensive coordinators in the NFL that is really well thought of, even takes some head coach interviews, but nobody ever hires him away from Kansas City, right? So Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes just sit there and they go to the playoffs every year, except for this year. They left that thing wide open. So I can't wait to see who actually wins this thing of the 4 teams left. Hopefully it's not one of those teams from the NFC West. But Kyle Shanahan, guys, needs his Steve Spagnuolo. Need that Vic Fangio, that older coach in his 60s or older that is not going to get hired away with a head coaching job. And I think that guy might be Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns. And Kyle Shanahan knows how good Schwartz is because Schwartz has been one of the most competitive defensive coordinators against Kyle Shanahan. I think his record's like 1-8 against Jim Schwartz. And Jim Schwartz has been defensive coordinator for some bad teams. You're right. And so, but with great defenses, Jim Schwartz now getting a head coach interview with the Cleveland Browns. I think he might have another head coach interview, at least had a first interview somewhere. But I don't know if he actually gets that job. And Chris Kocurek and the wide nine, the whole wide nine front, that comes from Jim Schwartz. So there is some crossover with the defense the 49ers run. Now the back end is different because the 49ers scheme under Saleh kind of used the wide nine front, but the old kind of cover 3 back end and melded those two together. Would Kyle Shanahan be willing to kind of hand off control of the defense and allow a scheme to change a little bit more than he has in the past for the right defensive coordinator? And would Jim Schwartz even become available? But he's a really good coach, and I think he'd be a fantastic fit. I think he turns 60 very soon at some point this year. So he's going to be a 60+ head coach the rest of the or defense coordinator the rest of the way. I don't think he's going to get the Browns head coach job. They're trying to say that maybe they'll even keep him as defense coordinator if they hire somebody else. I don't know about that. What do you guys think? Jim Schwartz as potentially that defensive coach, highly respected, one of the top coordinators in the NFL that Kyle Shanahan can kind of hitch his wagon to on defense and forget about defensive coordinator for a while.
I think it sounds good, and I like your thoughts of finding someone who won't be a head coach again. I think another guy who won't be a head coach again, really there's 2 guys that come to mind.
But why won't he be a head coach again before you say the name? Because
he has multiple failed stints as a head coach. So I find it hard that anybody will hire Raheem Morris as a head coach.
Yeah,
he's not even 60 either.
But he's not 60. He's not even 50 yet. He's 49 years old. But Raheem Morris is a guy who has coached with Kyle Shanahan. He actually was Kyle Shanahan's assistant head coach when he was in Atlanta and coached multiple positions, including on the offensive side of the ball as a passing game coordinator and receiver coach, even though he is a defensive-minded guy and has been defensive coordinator and obviously ran the defense for multiple teams, including the LA Rams, right? So Raheem Morris, I think he would be kind of one of the guys at the top of Kyle's list because he likes familiarity, and this is one of his guys, right? Like that's my dog. And he actually had glowing remarks when talking about Raheem Morris when Morris got the head coaching job for Atlanta. I mean, it was what he said about him. And hey, I was trying to get my dad to hire him as a defensive coordinator here and there. And, I got him to coach with me, and I've always wanted him to coach with me. And I tried to get him back as this. He loves Raheem Morris. But if he really wanted to go for the juggler, if he really wanted to stick it to people, he goes Brian Floyd. Lloyd. Wait, why am I blanking on
Brian Flores?
Flores, excuse me, Flores. Here we go. Brian Flores. I mean, is there a better option out there than Brian Flores? I know he can be a little bit different when he was in charge, but Brian Flores as a defensive coordinator, he's got to be top 3, right?
Yeah, I mean, Schwartz, Flores, Morris, all good names, but to me, I think the guy's already in-house right now. I mean, you're talking about former assistant head coaches. How about current assistant head coach Gus Bradley, putting him in there as defensive coordinator? You're talking about a guy from the Seahawks defensive coordinator. He was a fantastic defensive guy. Didn't do great as a head coach, but he's already in the building. He already knows the system. He can jump right in right now, and it's plug and play, right?
Real quick with Brian Flores, he's still under contract. He's still the defensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings, right?
For that lateral move.
I've heard a lot of people talk about Brian Flores. He's getting the head coach interviews, but I don't know. I mean, you can still ask because maybe he wants out and wants a new change of scenery or whatever. But it would be hard pressed to think that the Minnesota Vikings would allow Brian Flores to leave. But I have seen his name a lot as someone who could, again, you're talking about someone who's going to have you can't get more different from Robert Saleh's defense and how static that is versus Brian Flores, who throws the most stuff at everybody and has the most different coverages and blitz schemes and everything like that. I mean, that would look very different, but it'd kind of be fun. I would kind of like to see what the 49ers defense looks like, unleashing Brian Flores' madness on the NFL. But that would be a fascinating one. But you guys have hit it. I think that if we were doing betting odds, and I don't think the assistant coach odds for defense coordinator for the 49ers are up at FanDuel, but if they were, I would bet that Raheem Mostert and Gus Bradley, and probably Gus Bradley number one since he's already in the building, are the two most likely people to be defensive coordinator for the 49ers. Gus Bradley, he's there. And like Robert Saleh worked under Gus Bradley. Clearly they think a lot of him because they brought him in. And I think Kyle Shanahan might have brought him in just to make sure that he was available for this exact scenario if it was to play out this offseason, right? So I think most likely what happens is Gus Bradley ends up being defensive coordinator. And it's just the same scheme again. And it's like, all right, good. Here's the same scheme. We're running the same wide nine. Gus, you do your back end stuff that you've been doing forever. I thought Gus's defense was pretty bad in Indianapolis, and then they brought in Lou Anarumo, and all of a sudden their defense is really good. And it was like, I don't know about this cover three thing, Gus Bradley, but maybe he learned a few things and some tweaks and would run it differently than he had in the past because he'd be doing it the 49ers way, which is a little different than he had done things in the past. So Raheem Morris, though, is a really interesting one because that would be a favorite of mine, but doesn't Raheem Morris run a little bit more of an odd front, Croc? But could the 49ers, would that make sense?
But didn't they draft for what Salah had, right? Didn't they draft for that?
Well, Bosa is the hard one because he's your star defensive lineman, and he definitely fits more as a four-man front than an odd front. You probably don't want Nick Bosa standing up in a 2-point stance and going in reverse very often and doing any of that stuff. But the rest of the 49ers defensive line, like Michael Williams, I think it'd be a great 5 technique, like that bigger defensive end. I think Alfred Collins could do that too with his length. You really need length for those 5 technique defensive ends that, in nickel would end up being defensive tackles anyway and rush from the interior. And CJ West, I think it'd be a perfect nose. So they do have some pieces that could really work with more of an odd front. And then I wonder if you did hire someone like Raheem Morris, Croc, would that just be a situation where it's like, all right, Raheem, you're going to run our scheme though, right? Because I feel like that's what Kyle Shanahan truly wants. He's never, ever allowed somebody else to come in and run anything different than what they developed with Salah originally.
Well, we always say Robert Saleh. Kyle Shanahan is the defensive coordinator. Right. He just lets everybody know exactly what he wants them to run. And I mean, he's a guy. I heard a player talking about it. They're like, they could see, Kyle Shanahan could be the first head coach in however many years to be the offense and defensive coordinator. It probably happened in the 70s.
That's too much.
60s or something. But he's a guy that knows offense so well, knows defense so well. He probably could do it. So, yeah, he knows exactly what he wants and what he's looking for. That was the reason why he got Robert Saleh, and I think he is the defensive coordinator essentially, and they are going to be forced more than likely to adopt a lot of the system that he wants. And I continue to go back to Wilkes when Wilkes said, "Yeah, I'm still learning the defense." I'm like,
coordinator. Yeah,
wait a minute.
That was not a good look, and that worries me, to be honest with you. Like, I kind of like the Brian Flores idea. Kyle, you're gripping so hard that you're I think it's Princess Leia that said it, right? To Darth Vader. You grip so hard that you're letting it whatever slip through your fingers. I can't remember what the quote is, but I feel like Kyle Shanahan needs it so much. He wants it so much that he's got too much control. He needs to just hire an awesome coordinator and let them do their thing. And it might look a little different. And who knows, it might be even better, even though he likes the scheme that they've put together. Next, let's talk top priorities. What is the number one thing the 49ers need to do in the offseason in 2026, aside from hiring a defensive coordinator? Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode, and every game day, there's not many left, so you need to get involved quick. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. You open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. So go make your picks, then apply your profit boosts to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs are rolling at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Have you ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit? You know how important that is. When you want candidates you truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than a non-sponsored job. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed.
At Peacock and Wink, we have some breaking news.
Oh.
Another former head coach was signed, but not to the 49ers or hired, excuse me. One Mike McDaniel. Any guess as to where he took over as the offensive coordinator?
I think it was very curious that he turned down a second interview with the Cleveland Browns moments after it was announced that Robert Saleh got the Tennessee Titans job. Are we going to see Mike McDaniel and Robert Saleh together in Tennessee with young Cam Ward?
We are not. But we will see him with another former 49er head coach, Jim Harbaugh.
Jim Harbaugh. Oh, and Justin Herbert. There's a quarterback to hitch your wagon to. That could be fun. You know what's funny? I thought about that earlier in the offseason and was like, I can't imagine two personalities that mesh worse than Jim Harbaugh and Mike McDaniel. Right?
It's going to be fun.
God, put them on Hard Knocks, please.
Oh, yes.
I think they're probably more similar than we know. Like Jim was very quirky. I think that's the best word to describe him, quirky. And McDaniel is very quirky in his own way as well.
Very, very quirky.
And when I remember hearing McDaniel talk about Tua, right? Just he's the best, like the best he's the best. Who does that remind you? That's Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Colin Kaepernick
was the best everything. Alex Smith was the best everything. Like all his guys, they're always the best. So and we do know one thing about Mike McDaniel, which I watched this, I don't know how long it was. It may have been a 15-minute clip of him talking about football. I'm like, I don't think he's a head coach. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to coordinating and understanding football, man, I mean, he is. And a lot of these coordinators, you sit down and talk with them, they probably would sound like that as well. But it is very interesting just hearing his perspective on football. So I think Jim Harbaugh, a guy who's all football, I think that's going to go well, especially with McDaniel and being the run game guy that he is, being able to mesh that with the passing game. I think that will help bring a better blend than maybe what they got from Greg Roman. And that's not to say that Roman did a bad job, but obviously they wanted a little bit more. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what that looks like.
I can't wait. That's fascinating. They got a lot of talent on offense. Obviously, you got the quarterback. You get your both bookend tackles that were hurt last year back, so the offense has to be better just because of that factor. And he gets to work with the most talented quarterback that he's ever worked with. I mean, and that probably includes Matt Ryan.
Yeah, You're right. Herbert's a stud. That'll be fun to watch.
Oof, very interesting. Okay, McDaniel to the Los Angeles Chargers. Wink, 2026 offseason. What's the big picture? Kind of shorter answers here. We're running out of time. We're going to get deeper and deeper and peel this onion as we go through the offseason. What's your one priority, your top priority for the 49ers in the 2026 offseason?
Other than staying healthy, obviously to me it's wide receiver. I mean,
move the electrical facility across the street.
I mean, whatever it takes. $20 million, is that what it's required to move that thing? So.
Required 10 years ago, apparently. I don't know.
Just stay healthy. I mean, obviously that's not the case. We're looking at one group, wide receiver. I mean, when you're looking out there and it's Bourne, and Robinson, and you're like, really, this is who we're trotting out here right now. Like, all right, that's not great. The Ayuk thing obviously really came back to bite them, and Pearsall couldn't stay healthy. So you got to address it. Maybe not in the draft, maybe in free agency, maybe you spend a little bit of money and bring somebody in, but they need something to open up the field.
Hey, and we've been doing week watches all season long. They did fix the special teams this year, so you can check that one off, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, they went from almost dead last in every category to top 10 in almost every category. Big part of that, obviously, Brant Boyer coming in, doing great as coordinator. Morstead, top 10 and inside the 20 punts. And, I mean, Eddie Pinheiro. Can't say enough about that guy.
Yeah, work on the tackling, Eddie Pinheiro. Otherwise, or just get out of the way. Just don't even attempt it.
I'd rather him just stand there than do that silly little slide tackle.
After you kick it off, there's 10 guys on defending that return. That's the way it should be. If you make your kicks, and I'm fine with that. Croc, what one thing must the 49ers do? What's the top priority in 2026?
They got to get a safety. They have to get a safety. My buddy Chris pulled up the stats from this season. Matter of fact, let me read this off real quick.
Everybody out there shocked right now that Croc went DB on that.
I know, right? Well, did I go front end? I think front end helps the back end tremendously. But I think they're kind of
being nice because Croc's being nice because he knows I'm going to go to the line, so he wanted to take the back end. Are we talking like draft, free agency, trade, Croc, or whatever is needed?
Whatever is needed, because the 49ers safeties in 2025, according to my guy Chris, 86 receptions on 116 targets, has 74% completion percentage against the safeties, 955 yards, 14 touchdowns, a passer rating of 119.5, and 48% of the 49ers touchdown passes given up were allotted by the safeties.
Got to change my answer to say this, Croc.
Safety. Let's do safety first, then worry about the rest. You can go to chris.com and see if those numbers are right and those stats. I don't have them in front of me, Croc. They feel right.
Yeah.
Right. So shout out to Chris for pulling those numbers for us. I got to go to the Lions, man. The 49ers you cannot go on national TV in front of the world and not get a yard. And run this option, whatever the hell call that was, because you can't get a yard against the opponent
in Kyle's career.
You have got to go back to what they were and just be monsters up front. Offensive line, defensive line. Add another pass rusher in there. I know they spent 2 top 50 picks on a defensive lineman. Add another one. I don't care. It's too important to have a stud defensive line. Go trade for Myles Garrett and bring Jim Schwartz with him, right? Do what you have to do to be absolutely beastly up front, offensive line, defensive line, because the rest doesn't matter if you can't do that. Throw safety on top of it and a wide receiver too. I'd be cool with all those things. Wink, thanks for joining us once again. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. Check out the Everydayer Club on lockedon49ers.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes for an ad-free stream of this program and an invite to the Discord server. We're having a lot of fun chatting in there, and we will continue to have a ton of draft conversations on Discord and on this podcast. So make sure you tune in, subscribe, and Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.
We do ask that you dump your trash on the way out.
Safeties?